Welcome to Unpacking the Athlete podcast, hosted by yours truly, Rob Martin. Welcome to Unpacking the Athlete, a podcast dedicated to diving deep into what makes athletes who they are. This is episode 3, and today we had some technical difficulties. When I introduced Tori, she's not going to respond because when we did do the introduction, it did not record, so I'm re-recording the introduction, and I may have to fill in some spots to catch you up to date. Again, episode 3, today's guest is an avid biker and can put you in the hurt locker during a gravel race. She also rips her mountain bike and races cyclocross. Her accomplishments are as follows. Her first podium was in 2016 at the Iceman on a fat bike. She got her first Elite CX win in 2018. She has competed in CX Nationals twice. She has won the overall in the Michigan Gravel Race Series 4 consecutive times. As I said before, she'll put you in the hurt locker. She won the Yankee Springs TT in the expert category on the mountain bike, which led her to getting her Cat 1 mountain bike license and racing the pro race at Iceman and finishing 16th there. Without further ado, let's get to today's guest, Tori Kane, and we're going to start with the first question. If you had to choose between these 3 colorful socks, assuming they all have similar colors and patterns, which one would you choose? Socks with donuts on them, and yes, the donuts have sprinkles, socks with sharks on them, or socks with bikes on them. If this didn't record, she picked socks with donuts on them, and I had a feeling she was going to pick socks with donuts on them because she races a race where you eat donuts in it, and she's talking about this race as we start the podcast.
Your total time. And I no longer do that. I'm not set up for large quantities of donut in my physiology, but I have done it once. I actually researched competitive eating, thinking that I was going to blow the competition out of the water. And it was way harder than I thought. And I ate 5.
Wow, 5 donuts. That's and how much do you get off per donut?
Well, that I think in his race, I think you get 5 minutes.
Oh, wow. That's pretty epic. 5 minutes. Okay.
Yep. Harder than you think, though. So if you're going to do it, have fun with it, but it's not as easy as it looks.
No, eating donuts during a race is definitely not easy. Before we go further, I have to say something. It's a happy birthday to you. Is that correct?
Thank you. Today, yes. Thank you.
So happy birthday.
53.
53. Proud 53. Strong 53.
Very proud.
I'd like to start by talking about some of your spring gravel races, how they went, and which one was the best and why it was so good. So maybe like a brief overview and then get into the one that was this was the best one of the spring.
So I came into this, so a couple things just to kind of back up a little bit, and you were so kind in sharing some of those accomplishments. So I decided not to do the series this year, mainly because I felt like I reached a teeny bit of burnout last year, and I just wanted to do something different. And if I'm doing a series, I get really pulled into doing every single race. So I knew that I was going to race spring races, but I was not exactly sure which ones in advance, the way that I have been in prior years. Coming off of an injury, I broke my ankle in December. That was unexpected, obviously, and I wasn't sure how training was going. I was able to be on the trainer really quickly, but that's not the same as my usual, which would have been much more. I would have done a fat bike race for sure. I would have ridden my fat bike quite a bit more in the winter, outdoors. So I was missing that. So my first race was, I'm pretty sure, Melting Man, and it was brutal conditions, but I was game for just doing it and seeing how it felt. So I'll start with Yeah, so Melting Man was pretty. What do I say about Melting Man? Well, it can be beautiful or it can be, like spring racing in Michigan. They can be gorgeous and lovely, and you're pounding through lots of different terrain in nice weather, or it can be absolutely brutal weather. In that case, it was the latter. I've learned a lot over the years about gear, so I felt like I had so my thoughts about like which bike, that was a pretty significant question. I chose my cyclocross bike, which had electronic shifting, whereas my primary gravel bike does not have electronic shifting for weight purposes. And I knew that if the conditions were super gritty and sloppy, the electronic shifting was going to be key, and it was. So that was a really good choice. So it started with that. I think I got second in that race, second overall, which felt good. And then we move on to, you're going to have to remind me, like it's already been a few races. So there's that one, there's Lowell and Barry.
Did you do Dirty 30 or the
I did
50?
not do I did not do that one.
Okay.
But Lowell was also like not great weather, but not terrible. And I want to say so I've had a good season so far in terms of podiums. I've been top three in quite a few. Barry, I was, I think, sixth. I did the shorter Barry race, which was unusual for me, but again, I wanted to mix things up.
Yep.
It feels, like it went by really fast. And I was pretty pleased with, I felt decently trained. I think that I made some mistakes. Like in Barry, I wasn't at the front. I should have been at the front just to sort of be able to catch wheels that's a big part of gravel racing for women, is being able to first of all, know who you're racing against in a big pack, and also to be able to work in packs that are comprised primarily of men, because men are who's the biggest bunch in any race. So that was a mistake, but still had a great race.
Why don't you take us back real quick to Melting Man and tell us about the weather? Tell us about the course conditions so people can get a
Yeah,
better picture of when you said the latter, the bad conditions. Paint a picture.
in Michigan, I would say people can disagree for sure, but in my opinion, the worst conditions that we have to battle with are rain and cold. Barry, which 2017, which is listed as like one of my standout accomplishments, something that I'm proud of, that was right up there too. So we're talking like 30, like just above freezing, or like right hovering at freezing, 33, 34, and rainy. So it can be, so it's cold and it's wet. And then when the course, a sort of gritty mud. There's sections of Melting Man and Berry that are kind of gritty, sandy. They can get peanut buttery. So not only are they watt sucking, so you have to expend a lot more energy just getting through them, but they get into your gears. So Melting Man, here's the thing. It gets into your eyes. So like
Yes.
glasses. Racing with this other young woman, I felt for her. I think this was maybe like her first gravel race, and she's taken off her glasses, and I think she raced for inertia, and I'm kind of giving her some guidance. She's kind of like, "What? This is my first race. Like, what's going on?" And I'm kind of just telling her like, "Let's just stay on my wheel." There was one woman up ahead, so I was just kind of talking her through, and she's like, "Do you have water? I've got my glasses are so bad." And I'm like, "No, I've got nutrition in my bottle. I didn't have any plain water." Poor girl was desperate for water to get her glasses clean. And I was just, at that point, I think I had taken my glasses off. I was like, I'm done. So you've got grit in your eyes. Your glasses are pretty much toast at that point. If you want to clean them, you've got to have plain water. But of course, you're on a 60-mile race with two bottle cages and it's freezing. You pretty much don't have plain water. You usually have nutrition in your bottle. So anyway, yeah, no glasses.
Well, that sounds brutal. Cold, freezing, it's never ever fun.
And then some of your, at that point, some of your gears may not be working. Mine were,
Right.
but
I think I had a buddy that raced that race too, that he had shifting issues. Which one of the gravel races in the spring do you think was your best race?
I had a pretty good race at Waterloo. The race, I would have to say that it wasn't until, like, none of them felt super. I have to say this. I'm still finding form. Like, I guess that's what I was noticing in the beginning spring races, is that they all felt good, but none of them felt like I had sort of everything dialed together. And kind of feel like I'm still working on that, but like
Yeah.
Waterloo felt good. So another thing that can happen is you can lose nutrition. My water bottle. So water bottles, they can fly out of your cage when when you're on courses that are extremely bumpy, as a lot of these courses are, and you're going full steam and you're in a pack and it may be dusty. So there's kind of a variety of things that happen when you're gravel racing where you're not able to see potholes or big divots in the way that you would if you were just out there by yourself. And if you hit one, it can send your bottle flying and you don't go back for it. And like in this case, that had most of my nutrition was actually in my bottle. So it did set me back. I felt it like by the end, I had another bottle, but but guess what was in that other bottle?
just
Water.
just water.
Because I thought, man, I might have to clean my glasses.
Right.
I think I borrowed a couple chews from Christina Vipond, who's a good friend, and we raced together a lot. And I mean, that just was not enough. And I kind of bonked. So I felt really good at the donut race, actually, if that's still considered spring. That was just a couple weeks ago. That's the
Yeah.
race where I'm starting to feel just like I'm putting it together a little bit more.
Yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
still spring.
Hmm. Oh, you're right.
We still have a week.
You're right. You're right.
I can
Yep.
relate to the bottles and the potholes. I think it was the
Yep.
Dirty 30. I went through some rough potholes and both of my bottles flew out and I had to stop, turn around cuz there was still 35 miles and I
There
can't
you
go
go.
35 miles without anything,
There you
right?
go.
And so the group left and that was kind of the end of my
It,
race. I
that's
had to
it.
turn around,
Yep.
cuz like you said, you hold a wheel.
You have to hold a wheel. I mean,
And
in
there were
order to be in that front group. Yeah.
right, and there were no more wheels at that point.
There you
So I
go.
totally understand that. Why don't you walk us back and we'll go back and tell us about the broken ankle and maybe the recovery from that.
Sure. I had finished a really long race season, which was 2021. I raced a lot. I mean, yeah, I raced about 30 races. And that was a lot. I just realized, I was feeling tired kind of mentally. And I'd finished with Cyclocross Nationals, which was an awesome experience, but didn't go quite the way I wanted it to. And I'll give you another little tip here. I didn't test my bike out, my A bike for cyclocross. I have excuses. My excuse is that I do pride myself in taking really good care of my bikes. I ride them into the ground for sure. Like, I'm not someone who's like, oh, I'm not going to ride that bike because it's bad conditions. I'm like, that's why I buy these bikes, is that I can ride them in all conditions. But I clean them. I take them regularly to my local bike shop, pedal, and let them take care of them. And so I kind of feel like all of my bikes are pretty ready to go at any time, except, so this is newbie mistake kind of, although I'm not really that new anymore. I didn't test right before the battery. So my shifting, my Di2 electronic shifting, which has been great, never really a problem. The actual battery died. And I didn't
Okay.
find out until the night before I'm leaving for nationals the next morning. So there's nothing to be done. You can't, I couldn't even take it to pedal because they didn't have the battery, and there's no, so that's it. So that bike is out. So I chose to bring, this is a long story. I chose to bring my gravel bike, which has manual shifting, and my like backup cross bike, which didn't have the right. So lots of stuff just wasn't quite right. The course at nationals, which was in Chicago, the Chicago area, was super, I've never quite seen anything like it. It was really, really muddy, but
Oh,
with lots of hay. So they had spread hay and straw around the course. So if anyone saw nationals, maybe there's super like steep declines with these slippery stairs. I mean, like I've never, like I said, I've never seen anything quite like it. Someone else broke their leg on the stairs, which I've also never heard of. And cyclocross. So I had raced these bikes in crazy conditions. My master's race didn't go well because I was on that gravel bike and it went about as poorly technically as it could go. My single speed race went better. So I was able to snag ninth in single speed, which I felt pretty good about, but I was tired.
yeah.
Yeah, I was just tired. I was like, whoa, that was rough to be that stressed. It's almost like more stressful to have something go wrong than to race because you're
Yeah.
just like you're on edge, you're working with equipment that you know is not made for what you're doing, and you're just like shit the whole time. But it was still fun. I got to see Clara Hansinger like win again, and I love cyclocross so much. So I had, it was a lot. It was just a lot of like bike activity. And so coming home, I had taken a few days off, was ready, so I was just getting back on the bike, decided I was going to have some me time. Beautiful night, El Sabo, which is this forest preserve near us. That's a single track mountain bike and hiking, but like not technical. Although quite a few people do injure themselves out there because it's not technical, because they go fast. But I wasn't doing
Okay.
any of that. I had a light. It's a place where we do night riding sometimes, so a beautiful night, almost full moon. Dropped my kiddo off at driver's ed. Was going to take just a few recenter myself laps, and I'm going down an incline that's nothing much at all, but there was like leaf covered rut, so almost like a tiger trap. I just went, my bike just literally like dropped into this rut that I didn't see, which would have been okay. But I put my leg, I was kind of sliding, and next thing I know, I'm sliding with speed, and my leg goes into the rut. And just like the stories you hear, I heard a wee little snap.
Oh, oh,
And I'm like, damn, I think that was a bone. And I just knew right away. I was like, I broke my ankle. Like I just, I knew. So I was able to kind of stayed down for a second, picked myself up, picked my bike up, called my husband. I'm like, pretty sure I broke my ankle. You need to meet me at the parking lot. And I rode out one legged, which I know it really wasn't that bad because the ankle, so it was a really clean break. It's the two little bones. And if you're up and down, there's really no pressure. So it was the external. I honestly can't remember if it was the fibula or the tibula,
probably the
but
fibula.
it wasn't weight bearing.
Yeah,
It
fibula then.
wasn't. Yeah. So I was actually able to, kind of like if my leg was steady, it really wasn't that painful. It was only if I was having to adjust my weight at all to handle a turn or a big route that it was painful. And that was that.
So you rode out?
I rode out
That's crazy. And how long
at
was
night.
recovery? Go ahead.
Yeah, longer than I thought, let me tell you. But also, so some things went easier and some things didn't. They didn't cast it. I was in a boot and it was, yeah, pretty nasty the first week, just super swollen and purple and all sorts of different colors. But I was able to get on the trainer really fast. I know myself. I'm not someone who's going to push for long. I don't want long-term damage. That's not, I'm very aware of not doing anything that's going to hamper recovery. But I was, they knew I was an athlete and basically, well, wait, that was before I got my first follow-up. But I was on the trainer with no pain the next day,
Oh,
just in the boot. Yeah, just to keep things moving. No pain at all. And I got the okay for that pretty quickly.
okay.
So that's really what I focused on, was just being on the trainer and little by little doing different efforts. So just being on Zwift and easy and then a little harder. And I was surprised at like how decent I could sort of operate in a boot, just,
Right.
on the pedal. And then eventually you work your way into my trainer shoes were a little oversized anyway, so I eventually was able to get my foot in. Well, wait, no, wait. Before I did that, no. So I would get it into a running shoe. I had running shoes, and then like got it on the pedal in a running shoe, and then little by little got it into a shoe, and then it took a long time to be able to clip in, and then so it was just really like incremental, like one thing at a time.
Yep.
So like cycling was actually pretty okay. I was able to get outside. I don't know, within um 6 weeks about probably was the marker that I was able
Okay.
to do an easy ride at Custer, one lap in the snow. It was like, oh, that felt good. And then the next one I was like, damn, this doesn't feel good. And I would have to just go back, and you kind of two steps forward, a little half step back. But it takes a long time to be able to run. That's what I missed, was just being able to go for a jog, which is part of my repertoire of activities that I enjoy. And that's only felt normal recently. So it
Okay.
took a long time.
Yeah, it definitely does. Seems like you can get to 80% pretty fast, but then that last 20% just seems to
Hmm.
take forever.
Yeah, it did.
Okay, so we jump back to a little bit in time. How about we go back a little further and
Okay.
you tell us about how you got started in the sport, how you got started on the bike,
Yep.
and I'll let you go ahead and talk to us about that.
I mean, I was an athlete in high school, so I do have, I would say, an athletic background, but never super serious and never disciplined at all, like really at all. So, kind of fast forward a bit through life, I went to NYU for drama, so I, traveled and did a bunch of different things in life, and eventually started to move my way towards becoming a psychologist, which is kind of, that wasn't until about age 30 that I was like, oh, I probably should get serious about something. And I was living in Chicago. I'd been a musician, I'd been in the arts, and lots of great experiences for sure. Met my now husband, Tim, who's an architect. We eventually came to Kalamazoo so I could begin doctoral study. So kind of like fast forward to Southwest Michigan. I'm from the East Coast. I'm from Maryland. He's from Scotland. Met in
Oh,
Chicago. Yeah, he was
nice.
studying at IIT, or he had finished studying at IIT. He was working at that point. So here in Michigan, I'm in doctoral study, which is really intense. I exercised on and off when I could. There were long periods where really moving my body in a regular way was really like not a priority, because I was so slammed with being in a doctoral program and then having kids. So we had Jasper, who just turned 16, and then 22 months later, Finley, who's now 14. That was an amazing experience. And for sure, like, because I know that maybe it was on the radar to talk about parenthood. I would say, when you asked about accomplishments, if you want to ask, if you want to like nail it down to sort of like the physical thing that I've ever done in my life that I'm like most proud of, for sure, it's giving birth. Like, for sure. I was really lucky in that the birth experience was not traumatic, and I was able to do natural birth, which is what I was hoping for. And I felt like it was the hardest thing. For sure, I still feel that way. It's the hardest thing I've ever done, but also like the most amazing and incredible. And I'm glad I did it twice. The second time around, I got to give birth in a tub and be a little
Oh,
more relaxed about it, like at the hospital. I
yeah.
mean, hats off to people that do it at home, but I was able to be in the birthing tub at the hospital. So I just felt like this amazing badass of like, like, oh, I can kind of do anything. Like if I did that
Right.
and got through that, bring it. Wow. Okay. So then what was the question?
What? How did you get started on the bike
Oh yeah, yeah.
in the sport?
Okay, so we have these kids, doctoral study. So we get to a point in life where we're able to maybe start to do some stuff that's a little more adventurous, and really the gateway drug to cycling was
Exactly.
doing this thing. So Tim was like, "Hey, these people from work are doing this thing called a Tough Mudder.
Oh.
Do you want to, do you want to do it?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." And I started like I took it really seriously because I'm kind of a serious person. I used to be made fun of that when I was a kid for being a serious, serious kid. I'm like, yeah. I like trained and like formed a little group of the people who were doing it. We got together and we started training, and I was researching. It's this obstacle race. If people don't know, it's like between 10 and 12 miles and a bunch of different obstacles. And they're not the kind of some of them are physical obstacles, but really the main thing about these obstacles was that they were really more about facing your fear and mental grit than they were really physical feats. So submerging in ice water and going under a plank, and they have like divers there to make sure that people don't die, and unfortunately some people have died. Jumping through fire a little bit, like not a big fire, but just stuff like that. The toughest one is actually, maybe people are familiar with this, but there actually were live wires that shock you
Oh, really?
in water. So you're going through water submerged, and there's wires hanging. And then there's also like a hay bale running through a hay bale. I don't remember the voltage, but I will tell you that they did hurt. So there's like one obstacle where you would crawl under in water. And by the way, this is at the Michigan Speedway,
Okay.
where I don't know if you remember the news story, but a bunch of people got super sick
I
because,
do remember this.
yeah, I was there. I didn't
Oh,
get sick.
okay, good.
I didn't get sick. It sounds crazy, but it was fun. It provided a sense of accomplishment and working together as a team. And it reinforced that I kind of like this idea of training and kind of doing hard things. And a friend, so how it connects to cycling is that a friend was like, oh, like knowing that I was starting to do events like that, she was like, you should try this thing called the M22 challenge, which I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yep, but you could explain
Yeah.
it real quick if you'd like.
Yep, it's a modified try that takes place in super gorgeous Glen Arbor. M22 is, I think, the main sponsor, and it starts with a 2.2 mile dune run. You run and then you climb these dunes, which is incredibly hard if you haven't tried it. Then you do I want to say a 22 mile. No, sorry. I think the whole thing is 22. So maybe a 17-mile bike race around Glen Arbor, and then it ends with kayaking, either a paddle, like kayak or a stand up paddle for another, I don't know, mile and something.
Yep.
So I didn't have a bike, but a friend of mine sort of built me a bike. He's a cyclist, but also has like been a mechanic. He's also an architect, but he's a friend of Tim's, and had this old steel frame and these really cool wheels, and built me this bike. I didn't know anything at the time. So I was just like, great. I didn't know that it was super heavy. So I started training on the bike. Just asked someone who I was at a member of my gym who I knew was also a cyclist, Andrea, and she's been in the Kalamazoo community forever and longtime cyclist. And I was like, hey, do you think you could like teach me a couple things? And just did a ride with her, and she was like, okay, so here's a pothole. We typically point out potholes. And I mean, that was really like, I knew nothing, got on this bike,
Right.
hit a hill, and I was like, oh, like I like hills. And that's it. Like, that's where it started. I had no gear. I rode in, like, I think I bought a pair of shorts and had commuter shoes. And I think I probably did that M22 race in like these commuter shoes. And in terms of performance, looking at the times, I was like, oh, like, my cycling time is actually pretty good. And like my running time is pretty good. My paddling, terrible. Terrible. But that was it. That was the start.
So that got you hooked right there.
That got me hooked. Borrowing a bike, starting to do group rides, and then as soon as I mentioned that I did a Tough Mudder, everyone was like, "You gotta do cyclocross.
Oh, yes.
You gotta do cyclocross." I'm like, "Okay, like, I don't know anything. I don't know what that is, but maybe." Next thing I know, I think it was that same year, or no, the next year, I bought 4 bikes like that year.
We can't just have one.
I was like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it big. So give me a cyclocross bike. I bought a cyclocross bike and a mountain bike the same time. And then I bought a carbon road bike, which is still the bike I ride today. Actually, I bought a Scott Addict,
Yep.
invested in I love that bike so much.
Very nice. Thinking back even further, what
Hmm.
other sports or activities that you've done in the past do you think have translated into a better you on the bike now?
Running for sure. Running was really it was the sport that I was most focused on. But I also got into strength training at different times and doing different kinds of classes. And like in high school, I played lacrosse. I'm from Maryland, where lacrosse is a big sport, and I did enjoy lacrosse, but I never entered into any of those sports in sort of a deeper way. So as an adult, starting to do some strength training in the gym and taking classes in the gym, for sure, I started to kind of get dots starting to come together. And I'll talk about yoga too, actually, that you can adjust your physiology and you can do things that just like generally feel like better in life, like moving through life feels better. And yoga, actually, I started doing yoga when I lived in Los Angeles and was trying to work as an actor. And actually, that was life changing because I got into a really good class with a really good teacher. And that was probably my first taste of like also talking about mindfulness and like where you are today in this moment is the most important place. We are not going to think about what we could do yesterday. We're not going to worry about what we're doing tomorrow. We're in this moment and we're accepting our body in this moment, which of course would later become very meaningful in the type of therapy that I specialize in my work as a psychologist. So
Nice.
it all connects.
Yeah, let's not borrow worry from tomorrow today.
Right. We've got enough. We've got enough on our plate right
Right.
here.
Right. Let's be in the moment. I like that. What was the best investment that you made in yourself, or maybe a parent made in you, that's been the most helpful to getting you to where you are today? Maybe something you did, maybe there was a camp, or maybe sticking
Mm-hmm.
to track when you were a kid, or
Um,
maybe it was a good bike.
I mean, those are certainly, I do appreciate good equipment, but I would say I mean, the thing that comes to mind is actually being part of a gym has always been a really good investment for me. I like the community of people. I've been a member of a variety of gyms throughout my life, and those have all been just really good experiences. Taking time to invest in having a teacher be part of my life and having a coach. You were a coach for me for a time, and that was just something that I really felt like I wanted to try for a period. And I felt like that was a really good investment. I've taken part in clinics, like going to Katie Compton's clinic in Wisconsin. It was offered on a Tuesday, and the cost wasn't super high, but like driving, I drove myself 5 hours there and 5 hours back, and so that I could work with Katie Compton for a day. And that was a great investment. You just kind of these experiences that have played a part in my development.
That's very good. I like those. Did anyone in particular influence you to get on the bike or to get into the sport, or was it that event? And also, do you look up to anyone in the sport as an idol?
People did influence me. I would highlight Ben Clark, who was on, not related to Jamie Clark, who's the head of Team Clark Logic, but Ben is a friend of Tim, my husband. They played soccer together. And when I started to get into cycling, and I knew he was a cyclist, he was encouraging, and he was also into cyclocross. So he was at my first state championship where I raced the, beginner race and got second, and he was super enthusiastic. And what else? Oh, he was in that first Melting Man that I ever did, which is kind of like my first real bike race back in 2016. I think I shared my seat post kept dropping, and like he was with me the whole time, and he kept helping me fix it, and just was this real sort, like that's when it really felt like having someone in your corner who really wants to help you and is encouraging. Like that really made a difference. I'm now like, I watch cycling all the time. I love the sport so much.
Mhm.
I love, particularly I love watching mountain biking. I could watch it all day. And I watch other stuff too, cyclocross when that season is going. And Katie Compton was huge in terms of just identifying someone that I really admired in terms of her accomplishments, but also then like meeting her, and now I consider her a casual friend because we've had some communications over the years. She was just so kind and like down to earth, and her coaching in this clinic was just really easy to understand and like take something from. It wasn't, it wasn't sort of like up in the air, these vague recommendations. It was corner like this, and like here's an apex, and like try this, and like nope, don't, and she would like literally like take my hands off my handlebars. She's like, nope, put them here, pull up when you do this. Like, and so it's just stuff that really did have a positive impact. And I'm a huge supporter of hers. I think what happened to her at the end of her career is a real travesty, and I hope that some justice comes from that, because I don't think she actually did what she's accused of. So there's that. And then so who do I love? I love Celine, Carmen Alvarado. I actually really like Lucinda Brand, and watching kind of that rivalry. Mountain biking, of course, I love Kate Courtney, and, watch all her crazy videos and
Who
try to
doesn't, right?
emulate. Yeah, I'm like, okay, maybe I can balance on a crazy ball, one-footed, and,
Throw a weight in the air
that's
at
weight
the
in the
same time.
air. And Haley
Absolutely.
Batten, I root for just about everyone. It's if you don't display good sports personship is when you lose me. Or if
Yeah.
you say something crappy online, then you lose me.
Then we're out.
Then I'm out.
How many hours a week do you spend on the bike during base building?
I don't count.
I don't count.
I don't count. But I spend, and this is where I'm going to be like a very probably weird example. So I actually don't track anything, and I don't look at numbers. But that being said, I would say I do. And do I really build base? I don't know, Rob. I don't really know if I build base. I think I just keep going and don't stop is really, I think my strategy is don't stop for too long, because when you hit a certain age, I think I read that you just can't stop. You just have to
It-
keep going.
yeah, it
Um,
falls off fast.
yeah, it falls off fast. So I'll just tell you like in general, like what I try to do. I try to mix it up with intensity. So doing interval type rides where I feel like I might puke maybe at one point. That might be on Zwift, and sometimes I do their structured workouts. When I worked with you and you would have me do those intervals, I had this system where I would like peel little pieces of paper and put them by my bike to like keep track of how many intervals I was doing and pull down the paper, tear off paper. It felt symbolic somehow. And then I do some pretty intense group rides, mostly with, dudes who are around here. We have a Wednesday night, call it the Hammer, the Hammerfest ride. That's just pretty intense. There's packs, there's hills. So you can kind of get that intensity in about 3 to 4 group rides that
Yeah.
happen that I'm a part of. And then I also mix that up with easier. I probably could go longer. I'm preparing for Lumberjack, by the way, which is really a new thing for me. And I don't know how it's going to go. I don't know if I've gotten enough of those long rides in, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's this Saturday. You'll find out
But
soon.
I'll find out soon.
Mixing it up and keeping yourself going, not taking too long of a break is kind of what your motto is.
Yeah.
What has been your most memorable race of all time for you on the bike? And why don't you walk us through that?
I'll pick Waterloo just because it stands out as, yeah, it stands out a little bit. And I'll tell you, I'll share why. So in the beginning of 2021 season, so we had just come off of the pandemic year. I had done, as I mentioned in the stuff that I wrote, really thanks to Matt Acker and his buddies, Jenny and Matt, and they came up with this thing to do in 2020, which was all these Strava time trials, really, and doing routes. And it really played a big part in not only getting through 2020 for me, but also just like developing fitness. So hats off to Matt Acker and all that he does, and Jenny and all those folks. So basically, I was coming into 2021 pretty strong, just after a solid 2020 year when maybe everyone else or a lot of other people were like, oh, I haven't really done much. And I'm like, I've been working my ass off.
Right.
And I've been like competing with Paige Peters for QOMs and getting my butt kicked and watching and analyzing wind direction and trying to figure out when I'm going to go, ride this route and try and take these QOMs, which I find very reinforcing, by the way. So when you talk about accomplishments, like I can easily get as jazzed about a really strong ride where I snag a few crowns as being on a podium. Like
I
really.
agree with you 100%.
Oh my
100%.
gosh. To be real clear about that. So so that year I started riding with, I just call them the Bissell girls. It was Lowell, and there were these 2 Bissell women, Mary and M. And I think she introduced, I could tell that, you kind of look at each other, you kind of eye each other up and down, who's coming to play, or you think you do just based on how they look, like based on their kit. And I was like, these 2 have come to play, and they
Right.
were working together. But it's super nice. Like we introduced ourselves and started a bit of a camaraderie, just knowing that like that's who we're battling it out. Like they knew I was there to battle them, and I knew, but it's fun. It's competitive, but it's fun. So they took 1 and 2 that day, and I got third, and we just kept seeing each other. They were training for, I think, their first Unbound. So they kept coming to Michigan. Em lives in Indiana and Mary lives in Kentucky. So they were coming to Michigan for quite a few races. So I kept seeing them. And Waterloo that year was, yeah, it was like another battle. I was like, all right, like it's friendly, hi, we're all here to be friendly. Oh, I'll tell you how that race started. This is funny. So I had won Waterloo before. I had won, I want to say the year before. I can't remember, but and they didn't call me up to the start. They called up Mary being like, and we have the course record holder for Barry-Roubaix, and I was kind of like, and then all the rest. And I was like, what? Like, I'm Michigan, and like, I won this, and like, didn't get a call up.
Right.
So they were at the front. They had been, called up to the front. And I was just like, oh God, and I'm shuffled to the back and all, so I had in my head, I was like, Tori, don't let it, just, you're here to race. Like, let's not get off to a mentally kind of bad start. The race, it was just fast. And something happened to Mary. I don't remember what. Unfortunately, I think she got a mask. So another pandemic racing. I think she got a mask in her derailleur.
Oh gosh.
Remember, we would start, that was still
Yes.
the year that we were all starting with, like, they're like, have your masks on for the first mile, which didn't always work really, because the first mile is the most intense where you're
Hardest.
gasping for breath.
Right.
So masks are flying. And so she disappeared pretty quickly, and it was me and and we were marking each other the whole race. And this was a 60-mile 2-lap race, and just marking each other. And I don't remember if I attacked or we tried, or what exactly happened, but I just knew towards the end that it was going to come down to a sprint.
Yep.
That's always a feeling that's like a very mixed bag feeling at the end of a 60-mile gravel
Yeah.
race. Okay.
It's the start of
So
the race all over again at the end.
it's the start of the race all over again, and you start to do the calculations of like, how much nutrition do I have, how many matches have I burned, how do I feel, and you just hope for the best. And then also strategy. So you're also, because I had raced a few crits and a few road races, I understand some amount of strategy and placement. And she had one person from her team leading her. I mean, it was very obvious what was happening. Like, she had one person leading her out, and then I had a teammate actually at the exact same time right in front of me. So it was actually really perfect. We each had a lead out. And yeah, I mean, it was just telling myself in my head, like, be patient, watch for what's happening, but be patient, don't go too soon. And Waterloo, you turn into the, like many gravel races, you kind of turn into a parking lot area for the finish. And it was crazy with cones and stuff sort of narrowing in to the finish. But as soon as I made that turn, I just went, and just an awesome sprint, and never saw anyone again. And that was it. I crossed
And that
first.
was
And I was
it.
like, yes, it was one of those moments that it was just like, that felt good.
Heck yeah. Top of the world for you.
For that moment, yeah.
Heck yeah. That was a great story. How about we talk about now maybe I don't know if you ever do adventure rides with friends or big group rides for long distances. Do you have anything that was real that really stands out in that, and a story for that? Maybe some crazy things happened or
I do. I haven't done any like bike packing trips or anything like that. It's half in my bucket list because I'm a horrible camper. I found that out, by the way, doing WHAM for the first time, which was the Wisha Mile. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's a charity ride where you ride 100 miles for 3 days, and it ends. All the proceeds go to Make a Wish.
okay.
But you can camp to, if you choose. They go to a different site each night. I chose to camp. I bought a tent and got all, was ready for this trip. And like the first night I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't zip my tent up, and it rained in my tent. And
Oh no.
I only had the little, it was like, I bought the like little roll up self-inflating mattress, little pad. And I couldn't, I mean, my bones just went right into the ground. So
Oh,
terrible, terrible. So I was like, I don't think I'm cut out for bike packing, but maybe. But back to the grit series that Matt Acker put on, that was pretty awesome for all of the above. Some days I showed up by myself. I remember this day, it was kind of wintry, and it was, I think, when he started doing the, like, you have to do the whole route in order to get the segments. So you're all competing for segments that are put
yep.
into the spreadsheet, right? So they all sort of centered also around Ada. So I got to know Ada really well. And there's this cold, snowy day, and I'm showing up, and Julie Medema Momber, who's a total heavy hitter, one lumberjack. She's awesome. She's a pro mountain biker. She was coming in from her ride, and we kind of like look at each other and we're like, hi, like we know we're about to,
Right.
it's just funny because you're just out there. She was out there by herself. I was about to go out there by myself, and we're out there to like snipe each other's
Right.
UOMs. And but it was this like respect as she's coming in and I'm leaving, and it just stands out in my mind. But I was out there, it was beautiful. It was gorgeous. It was snowy. It was quiet. It was, in between riding so hard that like you can't speak and you feel like something might come up. You're also in this serene, just you and this gently falling snow. And I was like, I love this. Like,
Yeah.
I love everything about this. And it feels, some of those solo rides just feel amazing to me because it just feels like, I don't know, something that pushes you out of your comfort zone. It's meditative. So there's that one that stands out. But then there's also one where my friend Jillian, who's much younger than me, she was on my team at the time, super enthusiastic, super awesome spirit, and just smart young woman, super fun to be around. So I roped her into like doing a few of these with me. I'm like, come on, like, let's go up there and let's do this. And there's this one that had, oh my gosh, Rob, it had a segment called Sahara Yanel, and it was like through a creek and like puddles and frogs, and there was an actual like crossing where water was up at least up to my chest.
So
Oh
enhanced.
yeah, and like where I'm just busting, putting like everything out there to like get these segments, and just but you're you're like you're in mud, you're trying to like dodge like this huge puddle. Part of it you're running, so I'm like running with my bike, I'm cyclocross remounting and going, it was just this crazy, literally frogs, like I'm seeing frogs like around me. And I think I got that segment, that crazy segment, which I did look it up. I don't still have it, but during that period of just this lots of water and lots of craziness, yeah, I got that segment. So that just felt like a wild adventure, super fun.
Anytime you have to pick your bike up and the water is chest deep, that's definitely an adventure.
It was an adventure.
Who has been your biggest competition locally along the way? And maybe tell us about a time where you went head to head.
So many great competitors who have just been inspiring and amazing. When I started doing some crits, I remember we laugh about it because I just remember Shannon Wright, Shannon Wright Collins now,
Yep.
and
Yep.
Heather Goss was just like, I was so intimidated. They had these like purple kits.
Yeah.
Like they were these like crazy strong, women, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like maybe one day I can be fast like them. And Maddie Frank, I mean,
Yeah.
she's been so young, but like has been around forever. And I remember battling it out, won fat bike state championships, I want to say 2017. And it was pretty much just me and her, just like battling it out on this golf course in the snow, and she won. But, so those names just really, Sarah Williams, who is, amazing cyclocross racer, and so Val Herman and Sarah, and I are very frequently in the mix at a cyclocross race, and we support each other. And Amanda Scott, I think, is there too.
Yep.
And then there's folks who have skyrocketed, out of the pool, like Paige Peters, which is amazing, but it's like still very cool that you have races where you're like, oh yeah, I raced Paige, or like, yeah, like maybe I got that segment from her for a second and now she's a superstar. those are the folks that stand out as just really, we push each other and support each other. And then there's the folks who are from like out of town who show up on any given day. The Bissell, the Bissell women. Oh, so at the donut ride, there was a young woman, Jacqueline, I don't know her last name, but she races for U of M for 3T, super fast. And I was
Right.
like, you're awesome, like super fast. It's humbling. And then there's women who are also really supportive of me, being an older representative. They're super kind. They're always like, oh my gosh, like, what you're doing is amazing. And it feels just really good to get some of that love and respect from folks who are also out there just kind of getting into it. And it, seeing someone who's in their 50s still really pushing it, I think it's inspiring.
It is inspiring. You're getting young girls on bikes.
I
They're like,
hope
look what we
so.
can do.
I hope so.
Well, I think it is happening. I don't think you have to hope. I think you are.
Yeah,
People.
good.
So that's good. Keep doing it.
I will. It's
So that's
changed my life. It's definitely changed my life. Just this one little addition of like when I started cycling regularly and with the intensity that I do, like my immune system changed. I really feel like it is. I feel like it's helped me get through things like the pandemic. Now I believe in medicine and all that stuff too, but like my immune system, thankfully, was in a really good spot.
absolutely
Yeah.
being healthy, eating healthy, exercising. It
Mhm.
all adds up
Yes.
positively, right?
Yep.
If you don't do these things, you're going to have a little bit of negative that you're going to have to overcome, and then you might have to rely on medicine a little more. So,
Yep.
why do you love the sport, and what keeps you going?
So I'll just piggyback on why do I love the sport? I'm not exactly sure, to be honest. I just know this. Every time I get on a bike, I feel good.
Yeah,
And I'm not being like, I'm not exaggerating. Like there's something about being on two wheels that as soon as now I will procrastinate getting on the wheels. Like I am fully capable of putting off my ride or putting off, I can do that. But as soon as I get in that, get on the saddle and just feel the wheels beneath me, I feel better. So I think that was not something I could have foreseen. I really did. I thought maybe I was trained, here's a sport I can train in
yep,
to do this event. But for sure, the love, I mean, just the joy of being on a bike, that's something I couldn't have predicted. And I really do love all types of cycling. I think that's what keeps it fresh for me also, is that a mountain bike, a gravel and cyclocross, I rode a fat bike. I think if I only did one, I would be bored a little bit or more burned out. I feel like the variety also probably plays a part in preventing injury. When I'm on a fat bike in the winter, I'm using different parts of muscle systems, and it all ties together, right? Because that helps technically be a better mountain biker, and ride through sand. I do pretty well in sand and I do pretty well with hills. So all of that stuff kind of ties together.
absolutely.
I love the social aspect of it, with very few exceptions. Most people are just really, really kind and decent and supportive. And when you find people that you like to ride with, people that you trust,
Yeah,
that feels really good. So it has helped me be more social. And it's social in a way that even if you're more introverted, I'm probably a true ambivert. I really like my alone time, but I also like social time too. But cycling is something that you can do with other people and feel connected with other people, but you also don't have to like talk the whole time or
right, right.
you can. So it's like
Your energy's
social and
still there.
connected. Yeah, the energy is still there.
You don't have to communicate, but the energy's still there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can communicate, but it's in little pieces, like, hey, how you doing? Oh, we got this hill. I'm gonna, we can.
Exactly. And usually there's a chatty Cathy in the group. You can just listen to them.
I have,
That's
I have many
funny.
times.
Do you incorporate strength training into your training? And if you do, how many times a week do you do that?
Absolutely, I do. So I do strength training probably 2 times per week, and with some other activities as well. So and I'm probably lighter on strength training in summer months when racing intensity is getting a little higher. So I do a variety of things to just to feel like better in my body. So
Yep.
back, arms. I've had a few kind of like lingering injuries. Not even injuries. Some of them are injuries, but then some of them I think are just
Tightness.
getting old. Yeah, getting older and being someone who's super active and who does one thing kind of a lot.
Yep.
Um,
Overuse.
so overuse. So I get massage relatively regularly, and I've gone into PT as needed relatively regularly. Yeah, I mean, I like to keep things mixed, fresh, and varied. My husband, I gifted him a membership to. I go to Borges Health and Fitness, which I really like just for its community feel, and they have different classes that I really enjoy in a pool. So I got him a membership couple Christmases ago, and he is into a class called Body Pump, which is like a variety of strength based. It follows a format, but it changes class to class, week to week.
Gotcha.
So we do that together, and I feel like that provides a really good structure for just making sure I'm hitting all the muscle groups, front, back, top, bottom. I don't go super heavy on actually squats and lunges because I'm typically like either coming off of a hard day or going into a hard day. And then yoga for flexibility and mental health,
Yep.
actually. And
Absolutely.
then I try and swim at least once a week just for general mindfulness, and just the water feels good and moving my body in a different way.
And how many days a week are you yoga? Because you said once a week for swimming, twice maybe for the strength. What about yoga?
So I try to do at least one formal class
Okay.
per week, but then every day, like I try to do at least a brief yoga, whether it's just being in down dog for a moment or doing a brief sun salutation kind
Yep.
of series. I
Perfect.
try and do that, most days.
Nice.
We have a trampoline. I love just getting on the trampoline, and I read somewhere about your fascia and how trampolining is really good for your fascia. So I just like to play. I mean, I
Right.
just really like, I don't want to ever take things so seriously or be so focused on performance, any part of this, that it's not fun or playful. Like, for sure, I like to play.
I agree. Trampolines are fun.
Mhm.
While we're on the topic, I'm just going to hit some other things. Do you use
Sure.
any kind of percussive therapy or foam rollers or any tools like that?
As many as I can get.
As
Um,
as we get older, we need more, don't we?
as many as I can get. Yes, I will do it all. So I have a foam roller. Yeah, it's super painful, but it also feels like it's hitting like I feel like that discomfort is exactly what needs to happen. I invested in a pair of compression boots. Actually, the woman that I was mentioning from Bissell, we stayed together for Trek Cup, and she had a pair. And she was like, "Do you want to try them?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Okay, these are the real deal.
These are worth the
Um,
money.
these are worth the money." So I get into those regularly. Sometimes I get into them just because I'm like, I just want to do it. It just feels good.
It
Like,
does.
it's not even after a hard ride. My kiddo just he's been dealing with he's a runner, competitive runner, and has some tightness, and we just got him kind of the knockoff Theragun.
Okay.
I will try it all. It all feels relatively effective. I have Theracane. I'll just show it to you real quick. This
Did
is
you make
from.
that because of your last name?
I should have, right?
Right?
But this is something that my PT from some time ago, because it can get into like the spots where you can put pressure on.
Oh,
You
okay.
can and it just it's like just the right amount of pressure to get into super small little tight. I get a lot of tightness in my shoulders
Yep.
and my upper back.
Okay. Yeah, that looks like you
So
could definitely get back there with that.
yeah, all sorts of stuff. I can't afford to see a massage therapist as much as I would want to, like, daily. I
Right.
don't have a soigneur, so you gotta use the props.
Yeah. Theracane by Tory Kane.
Yes,
You've got a race this weekend coming up.
I do.
So, what does a race week look like for you before a race? So, what are you going to do this week leading up to the race? Can you walk us through it?
This is a race unlike any that I've ever done before. So this is really going to be a little different. So I'm actually super focused on taper this week. My goal is to do, and this is this is pretty much like some internet information. So I won't say this is like highly researched or anything, but I'm doing short, intense efforts to kind of keep the legs open. And then I'm going to do a longer effort on Wednesday. And that's it. I feel like the fitness is what it is. So
Yep.
hopefully it's there. But there's not going to be any major changes to fitness. So what I want to make sure that I don't do is, oh, so like crash on Thursday, which is what I did.
Jeez.
Yeah, I slid out on my ride on Thursday. So I've got road rash that's been interfering with my sleep. But it is what, again, it is what it is. You just take care of yourself the best that you can.
Yep.
It's about getting also as good of rest as I possibly can. So I'm kind of focused on that, just making sure that my sleep is really dialed in this week to the best of my ability and keeping my legs open, keeping them primed for what's coming, but also I'm just really like not. I'm just like it's going to be what it's going to be, like not stressing too much about it.
Any extra maybe Theraguns or boot sessions this week?
I'm going to definitely do at least a couple boot sessions. Hydrate, making sure that I'm really well hydrated because you're not going to hydrate the day of. It's in a lot of, I mean, you're hydrating the day of, but that prep, right?
Yep.
The making sure that your body, because you don't want to be playing catch up, making sure that I have my nutrition. Actually, that one of the big differences is having my husband who will be there and going over some of the exchanges, like getting, my hydration pack off really quickly and getting a new one on,
Yep.
having a variety of snacks and fuels. I like to mix it up. So I use commercially prepared gels, but also make my own.
Okay.
I use a chia base and have some recipes that maybe one day I'll share with the world. But I have like some formulations that I keep in secret stash, and so it's a mix of store bought, my own, and then I'm making also rice flour. It's kind of an Asian snack called mochi.
Okay.
Is my like super favorite semi-solid rice food right now.
Well, maybe one day we'll get to hear the secret ingredients there
Yeah,
in your
yeah,
secret stash. Secret stash. It's funny because there's
yeah.
my favorite pizza place. When you said that, popped into my head. It's out in Crested Butte, Colorado. The Secret Stash. So if you're ever there, you got
Oh,
to go
it's
see the
called
Secret
secret
Stash.
stash. Yeah.
What is your favorite type of interval workout on the bike? Do you like short intervals? Do you like longer intervals?
Yeah, I would say short because they're hard and they hurt. They're hard and they hurt. I do like those super punchy 30 seconds at can you do 30 seconds at 350 and then recover, and stuff like, yeah, I like that stuff. It's short enough that I feel like I can handle it. And then it's the longer stuff that for sure is more challenging mentally, just because you're in that pain cave longer, and
Yep.
the urge to escape, and you got to play a lot more games with yourself to stay in it.
Absolutely. I know exactly what you're talking about. That's why I laughed so much there.
Yeah. So
to
that's why when you would assign the, like, I don't know, sometimes I think it was like 45 seconds as hard as you can, I would have to really like, okay, like, and then I'm going to rip my paper after like I had like these strategies for how to kind of get my mind to stay in it. And
Yes.
yeah.
No, I agree. I think something else that works for me is indoor. If I'm less than 2 minute on intervals, I'm good to go. But if they go
Mm.
beyond 2 minutes, I need to go out on the road and do the intervals because
Oh,
it just seems to help. For some reason, being stuck
yeah.
inside looking at the wall or the TV isn't enough distraction. I need to be outside and have all the
Yeah.
stimuli, and it just helps get through the longer intervals for me anyway.
Yeah. That makes sense.
Short intervals, my favorite as well, by the way.
Hmm.
If there was one race that you could do over again, what race would that be, and what would you do differently?
Oh my gosh, I have an easy answer for that. It would definitely be my master's race at Nationals Cyclocross. And I would have checked my bikes sooner than the day before, not relying on the fact that I take care of my bikes as enough of check your equipment. Check your
Yeah,
equipment. I would have ridden that race on a different bike.
that was an easy answer.
It was a really easy answer because
Easy
it's
question.
fresh.
It was right there. If you could spend 1 week training with an athlete or a coach, who would it be and why? Personally, I would pick an athlete for myself.
I'm gonna pick Wout van Aert.
Oh, yeah. Definitely would be good to hang out with,
I
right?
would love to hang out with Wout for a week for a variety of reasons. He's very he's my favorite superstar cyclist right now. I mean, I feel a little bit like maybe I should pick someone like Lucinda Brand, but he's just yeah. While I just think would be able to, because he is so varied in his strengths, and I consider myself to my degree also varied in my strengths. I feel like it would be a really fun week of doing different things with a focus on cyclocross, which is my favorite. So I think
Yep.
that would just be super fun to get his input. Just hang out with Walt Van Aert for a week.
Heck yeah. I like
Heck
it.
yeah.
What do you do pre-competition to get yourself ready and motivated? Do you do any mental
Mm.
visualization? Do you listen to any kind of music?
Both. I do. I have a pre-race ritual that I'm kind of changing up a little bit because I also don't want to be overly controlled about stuff like that. But I have a ritual where I send light and safety to everyone who's racing, including my competitors. I kind of go through and have a little mantra that I tell myself that I'm going to race smart and race with heart and just kind of show up on the day with the best that I have. I don't know if it's placebo. Like I do kind of do the amp lotion,
Yep.
the bicarb lotion. Does it work? I don't know, but placebos are effective even if they are placebo.
It
Um, it's true. So
is.
I have just kind of like, yeah, just kind of getting into a good mindset where it's not so focused on performance and is more about the experience and showing up, just like showing up and feeling like if I show up and do the best that I can do, that's, I really work hard to be satisfied with that and proud of that. I have a pre-race playlist on Spotify that I have on my phone and listen to in the car, and tweak on a regular basis. That's just songs that get my blood racing and get me ready to be fierce.
Absolutely. So it's interesting that you changed that playlist up.
I
I like
do.
that. Keep it fresh, keep it
Yep.
something new and more invigorating.
Yep. I just added Kiss's Detroit Rock City
Oh,
to it.
nice. If you were to give advice to any younger athletes coming up that look up to you, what would it be? What would it be? What advice would you give to the younger athletes?
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is be kind to yourself. Like, I really think that probably the biggest challenge that I see for cyclists in particular, I'm sure other sports, it's also this way. Being a psychologist, I have a little bit of insight into the dark side of sometimes competitive sport. I specialize in eating disorders, so there's just been a lot that I've seen over the years where things get not super fun and not super great. And I think cyclists can just be really hard on themselves. And I think there's times where I've been really hard on myself. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Feeling like if you're not winning, then you're letting people down or that you're a disappointment in some way. And I think if there was one thing that I would focus on, it's like relinquishing some of that focus on performance, because performance will come. Like it either, and performance is going to depend a lot on genetics and what you've got, and then also training. But like that's going to come, but not if you're so hard on yourself that you're drifting into depression
Yep.
or restricting your food in such a way that like life isn't fun anymore. And I just see that a lot with cyclists. And so
Yep.
I would say be as consistent as you can, surround yourself with people who push you but are also supportive of you, and have some fun, and don't be too hard on yourself, because that can be really lonely and just a really, I've had some moments where it's like I could tell in my head that it wasn't going to be the loss that I was going to be struggling with. It was going to be my thoughts after the loss.
Yep.
And I've worked really hard to dial that back
Yeah.
because it's not a good feeling.
Yeah. That whole talk there resonates with me. It does. It's tough. I'm definitely hard on myself,
Hmm.
and I've been working on not being as hard and having more fun on the bike, and
Hmm.
and that kind of helps out. So
Hmm.
I think that's good advice. I don't want to take up your whole birthday day with the podcast. So I think we're going to wrap it up. Is there anything else that you'd like to say before we sign off?
I would say that there's one thing that I forgot to add, and I don't know which section I would have added it to, but coming into cycling later in life was for me really serendipitous. Like, I don't think there was another time in my life that I could have. Like, I
Okay.
really feel like everything sort of unfolded as it was meant to be. And yeah, I definitely missed the window to be competitive at the Olympic level, for example. But at the same time, there were so many factors that just, it really took cycling coming into my life later when I had some time to devote to it. And actually, it's an expensive sport, as you know. Um, it is, and hopefully we can make cycling more accessible to folks who don't have the money to spend on a carbon road bike because they're just super expensive. But like that played a part. The other thing that played a part, I think, is coming into cycling at a time when my body was post kids and entering into, let's just say it, menopause years, because I have found that I feel stronger. I think it was actually that reduction, just to talk about hormones for a second, that reduction in sort of my reproductive year hormone levels that really played a part in me getting strong really fast.
Okay.
I can't be sure. I never did like consistent hormone testing,
Right.
but I think there was something to it where my body was just really ready for the kind of work I started to do. Post kids, my physiology changed. I also had kids relatively later in life, by the way. So I was 36 and 38, almost 39 for my two kids. There were just things that were like the stars were aligned for me to get competitive when I did. So don't let, for women who are thinking they're too old, not the case. You might be right at your prime to, not everyone has to compete. You don't
No,
have to do anything, like I race a lot. No one has to do that. But just to feel really strong, it's not too late.
I agree with that. And I'd like to add, I think that the more people we do get on bikes, I think the planet would be a happier place.
How
And
about it? The cars that are sometimes not so nice, or the
Mhm.
experiences we have, and you're just like, just get on a bike.
Exactly. Exactly.
Boy, you're, like what is going on in your life that you are that angry? And
Seriously.
have you ever done lumberjack?
Yep, I did it. I think it was 2017.
Any like little pieces of advice?
I hope that you've figured out what works for eating when you're pushing yourself hard, because
Yep.
I didn't, and I took some beef jerky and some peanut butter jelly sandwiches and the wrong kind of fuel. You need maybe just some plain water with you, just in case, because the tasty stuff can get, your body might start rejecting it, because mine did. I use Ensures because I can't eat. My mouth gets so dry, I can't
Yeah.
swallow anything, right? I chew and chew and chew. I can't
Right.
swallow because it's so dry and it gets caught in my throat. Try to stay hydrated. I bonked completely after the last aid station on the last lap. I had to walk up hills. I went to the bathroom during the race after I started bonking, and it, because I hadn't had enough fluids, it just burned really bad.
Oh,
Like I crossed the finish line. I was like beyond, like I was
not.
starting to pass out. A nurse came over. She was putting the smelly stuff under my nose.
Oh my
So
God.
I
Okay.
wasn't doing too well.
Okay.
And it was hot
Was it
too.
really hot?
Yeah, it was hot too, hot and humid.
Okay.
I think this week we might get lucky because I think it's supposed to be hot today, hotter tomorrow, possibly even super hot Wednesday, and then I think the temperatures are supposed to come back down. And I'm looking right now, and it's looking like mid 70s for the high on Saturday up there, and I'm hoping that it stays that way. Tori, where can people find you on the web if they want to connect with you?
Professionally, my website, which is Kazoo EBT, that's my practice, KZOOEBT.com. I have an Instagram, Tori Kane on Instagram. I post a lot about cycling and races and that stuff. And yeah, that's where.
Awesome. Can you say your website one more time? Can you spell it out?
Sure, KZOOEBT for evidence-based therapy.com.
Very nice. And that's Tori with a Y, not an
It
I.
is Tori with a Y. Yeah.
Thank you for
Take
coming
two.
on today. It's been a pleasure. We got to have an amazing conversation, and I wish you a very happy birthday.
Oh my gosh, thank you. This has been so much fun. I love listening to podcasts, so it's been an honor to be on a podcast. This is my first one. Thank you for the opportunity. I love talking about cycling. I'm usually boring people talking about cycling. So this was a treat and a birthday treat to boot. So thank you.
Thank you very much. You have just listened to Unpacking the Athlete.